Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, friends, wherever you are. I'm Nilima Bhatt, the founder director of the Shakti Fellowship and the co-author of Shakti Leadership. And we run these Shakti dialogues. And today is another episode of a Shakti dialogue with our esteemed guest, Dr. Sampadananda Mishra ji. He is a Sanskrit scholar, currently based in Pondicherry with the Sri Aurobindo Society, where he directs the Sri Aurobindo Foundation for Indian Culture. And I'm just so delighted that we have a scholar like him and a very sincere practitioner of the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, whose pictures are right behind him. The Shakti leadership model and the book is completely based on the inspiration of the integral yoga. And so it's my great honor to be able to discuss deeper and more subtle aspects with Sampatji today. Before we start, I want to give a context in which this dialogue will be held so he can speak to that. So if you'll allow me, Sampatji, let me just quickly read out what is the ideal of Shakti leadership and who is a Shakti leader. Okay? So the way this came to me is a Shakti leader is a Renaissance person, an integral yogi or yogini, open to different worldviews and consciousness practices for enlightenment, empowerment, and embodiment. Recognizing that no one approach has all the answers to solve the crises of our times, they synthesize and create a unique path for themselves that bridges all polarities, drawing from the best of the East and the West, the North and the South, the masculine and the feminine, right brain and left brain, head and heart, body and soul, logos and mythos, eros and thanatos, to come into their psycho-spiritual wholeness and full-blown Shakti, their innate power, in order to lead the change they wish to see in the world. With the discernment of a scientist and the curiosity of an artist, they live boldly in the intersections of the ancient and modern, science and arts, psychology and spirituality, rationality and creativity, entrepreneurship and environment, dancing in the dualities from their non-dual loving heart broken open to their full creative flow. A devotee of truth and an ego willingly surrendered to it. They are faith-friendly and faith-neutral, respecting the wisdom of world cultures and open to engaging in their practices and rituals. They dig deep to find our universal common ground, our interbeing, while remaining anchored in their own truth and honoring the truth of their own source heritage. Rejecting nothing, embracing everything, their primary motivation is to unify humanity around our shared planetary destiny. And for this, they willingly make the heroic journey to self-mastery in order to serve selflessly. In the process, they find Ananda, the innate delight of existence, becoming the love, peace, joy, and abundance they wish to see in the world. And sharing all of it is their privilege. So we hope that this Shakti dialogue reaches aspiring Shakti leaders. And so let's begin with your deep grounding in your own heritage, your own culture, which is the Indic tradition and Sanskrit as a language that holds it so beautifully together. So let me ask, what is your journey to integral yoga? How did you reach here?
Okay, so at the outset, let me express my sense of gratitude that we are together here in a platform to talk about the Shakti leadership and all the inner power which is necessary for our progressive evolution. So, with this deep sense of gratitude to the divine for bringing together and creating a platform, uh, my journey started right from my childhood, because from my childhood I was a little different child, and my grandfather, the whole credit goes to my grandfather who had chosen me to lead me on this path. He was a pandit, and he had a lot of practices, though initially he was a teacher running a pathshala, but later the money that he was receiving from the pathshala was not enough to maintain his family. So he left that job and then started the karma kanda, which gave him more money. And also, like, his point was, by doing this karma kanda, because I have to recite the mantras and do the puja, so I am more close to the divine. At the same time, my family is also well maintained. And then he inspired most of our village people to pick up this karma kanda, and most of our village members are doing even till date this karma kanda. So being like Hindu priests and serving in temples and then doing all kinds of rituals is the environment in which I grew right from my childhood, along with my other brothers and cousins and other members in the village. But my grandfather had a very special attraction for me. He had this whole vision that every family must dedicate one member of the family for the nation, for a different cause, for a higher cause. And he had chosen me from that angle, and he told me that never give up the learning of Sanskritam, and uh, don't be a knocker of anyone. So that's what he is think, that because Sanskritam is a language of freedom, so experience that freedom, that swatantrata, and there lies the inner strength. Whatever you may be doing in your life, but if you don't experience that inner freedom, that you are free to do all that you want to achieve, your sankalpa shakti has to be that strong. So the sankalpa shakti can never be sustained or maintained powerfully if that experience of freedom is not there. So if you are bound by your limitations, then you are bound. And this whole aspect he injected into me right from the beginning. So he used to take me to temples, to ashrams, to introduce me to so many sadhus, and then he will ask me that, okay, recite those mantras before them, and then he will ask those sadhus to bless me. So in that way I was fortunate to have his companionship uh, in the childhood. But when actually I was in the process of learning maximum from him, so he had a stroke and then he left. So my learning from him remained incomplete, I would say. But still I am very well connected with my grandfather, and I have so many other experiences with him also, like how do we communicate at a certain level. Whenever any help is needed, he is there with me. And then he comes to me in my dream, he gives me solution. And then, yeah, it's an amazing thing. And I have a lot of interesting stories with regard to that. So this is how I started. And I remember, like, when my parents admitted me in a school, not in a traditional pathshala, so he objected to it. And then he said, like, because I was doing matriculation in those normal school. At the same time, inspired by him, I was doing the traditional courses like prathama, madhyama, the traditional Sanskrit courses, because he was very happy. That he said, here is your core aspect, and whatever you are doing in the normal school is fine. So you should learn little bit English and all these things, but don't entirely give yourself to the normal mainstream school. Continue with the traditional pathshala. So after matriculation or that madhyama exam, So I was supposed to, as my grandfather, intended that I should have gone to another traditional Sanskrit school, but my parents and others, they wished that I should continue in a normal college with a little bit of English education and this thing. So he was very unhappy, but at the same time, I brought, because I had chosen Sanskrit also as one of the subjects along with political science and economics and history. So I brought those books of Raghuvansham and Kumara Sambhavam, whatever was there in the course. So I sat with him and then I showed him that, okay, even though I'm doing in the normal school, this is what is my main subject and then I'm doing it. So anyway, in my intermediate, so he was happy, but it was during that time he got the stroke and then he left his body after 1 year, suffering from severe paralysis. But I continued with my study. That year I didn't do well because that was a very not a good year for me to take this shock, and a lot of other things also happened in the family. So then I went for my graduation with Sanskritam as the main subject. And then I, post graduation also, I chose Sanskritam as my main subject. And then while doing my post graduation, that was an interesting phase, because after my grandfather passed away, I was somehow, in a state of, I would not say that I went to depression or anything, that has not been a part of my life. So I always feel the ananda and energy always, but it made me quiet. It made me go deep within myself. And I used to spend maximum time repeating the Gayatri mantra, the traditional Gayatri mantra of Vishwamitra. So whenever, like when my friends will be going to park or chatting with friends and then spending their time in like unnecessarily, so I used to be found in the room sitting with my traditional attire and then doing the Gayatri mantra. So it happened that I came to a state where it was dragging me to some other world. And then suddenly I had a feeling that, oh my God, what am I doing? So the state in which, if I remain in that, what will happen to the family, to this earth for which I am born and all these things? What will happen to material life of mine? So that was a question, that conflict again dragged me away from my mantra sadhana. I left the doing of the japa because there was an enormous flow of certain higher energy which my being was not prepared to accept and hold it. I mean, acceptance was there, but to hold it and sustain it and then utilize it, I was not prepared for that. So I left it at that moment. But this sadhana of 3 years, and throughout my graduation 3 years, I did this sadhana all alone in my room. And this helped me. Although I left that rigorous practice of Gayatri Mantra, I used to do it once, twice, or 7, 8 times sometimes. But I left that rigorous sadhana. But it helped me immensely in bringing clarity into many aspects of whatever I was studying. So what aspects of the language, of history, or whatever my subjects were, I was unable to understand. So those understandings started coming to me, and I did very well in my post graduation. My creative energy, my understanding, my power of expression, everything was perfect during my post graduation. And it was during that time we had a teacher who was a devotee of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. He used to come to Pondicherry. So he used to conduct the study circles, because in Odisha, the study circles are quite, yeah, popular aspect related to Sri Aurobindo and the mother. So you have thousands and thousands of study circles centers in Odisha. So I had no idea about who Sri Aurobindo is, who mother is. So he used to drag me because he used to love my simplicity. And then he said, that, no, no, you come to my home, sit here. So he used to read the Mother, Savitri, which were like Greek and Latin to me. I didn't, get into it at all. But he forced me that just sit and listen. Then he will prepare some good food just to attract some of us. And during the second year of my post graduation, so he brought us on a study tour to South India, and Pondicherry was the last stop where we stayed for 4 days. So he used to take us to all the departments, and then he used to ask us to spend some time near the samadhi. So I bought some books also. My first book was the Foundations of Indian Culture, because there my interest was there. And some of the biographical sketches also I bought, small books, big books, but I couldn't understand anything. Then my post graduation was ending, the exam was ending. Then as per the uh, the academic sessions, the exam gets over in the month of May, but the result comes in the month of September. Then I lose one full academic year to go for my MPhil course. So in the month of April, I started writing some letters to some of the universities: Delhi University, Pune University, Pondicherry University, that I am a student of Sanskritam. And then my post graduation, my graduation, I had secured more than 60%, and post graduation also, like first year exam I have written. On the basis of that, can you give me the admission into MPhil? And then before the first semester exam, I would submit the certificate that I will be receiving from Utkal University. For if I'm unable to produce, you can stop me, I'll come back. So Pondicherry University responded well, and then he said, like, if you can bring some more students with you, it will be good. So I gathered some 4 or 5 students. I convinced them. We came here. So I used to go to the Samadhi every day, and but I didn't know anyone. Then I went back. My exam was over. I went back, and all on a sudden, when I was preparing, because I had no intention of doing any job, so I wanted to start my own ashram or gurukul kind of thing, where my grandfather wanted that I should start this gurukul with Sanskritam, Ayurveda, Jyotisha, and Karmakanda. These 4 will be taught, and these are the, he said, like, this will give you respect and this will give you money, both. So you should do that. And we had certain properties when I was preparing, because if I have to start a gurukul, I have to have some documents, some work that I can show to people, this is how I work. I started writing a book which will help the students. So while I was preparing this, I was sitting on the, because our village is on the bank of a river, so I used to spend maximum time on the river bank. So I was sitting, and the postman came and gave a letter to me, and that letter was from the present Sri Aurobindo Society, one of the executive members. So he wrote this letter that we had a discussion and a meeting in which we met Professor Kutumba Shastri, who was my guide in my MPhil. So we were looking for someone who could dedicatedly work for a cause at Sri Aurobindo Society. And Professor Kutumba Shastri said, if you are looking for a candidate like this, so he is the best, so you choose him. And then I thought, the first question came to me that, Pondicherry is such a, bright place, and there are so many intelligent people. I'm just a fresh student, was just passed out recently, and I have no idea, and I don't know much English because I never spoke English. So throughout our graduation, post graduation, we did it in Sanskrit medium or Odia medium, and English was a subject, but that was a subject to write exam, but not to speak. So while doing MPhil here also, I struggled to communicate with people. So I said, I don't know even proper English. So what do I do in Pondicherry? So, and maybe, like, my professor had unnecessary hope of me. So I rejected, I didn't respond to that letter. So that was in month of July. And then in the month of September, again, this letter got repeated. And the same letter, they said that we didn't receive any reply from you. Did you receive our previous letter? And then my grandfather had already told me few sutras. So he said, from the occult point of view, if something which comes back to you for the second time, and which is for a greater cause, so with your eyes closed, you should accept it. So I packed my bag, and then I came to Pondicherry without knowing anyone, nothing, because that was the sign that, yes, I have to accept this, because this is coming for the second time and it has a greater cause in it. So I came here, and then I didn't know anything about Sri Aurobindo. So I requested the authorities that can you give me 1 year to study Sri Aurobindo and then find out in what way I can participate in this work. So I studied full 1 year of Sri Aurobindo's various works, and then I found that the contribution of Sri Aurobindo to mankind, the contribution of Sri Aurobindo especially uh, in the field of Indian culture, the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Gita, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Kalidas, all the classical Sanskrit literature, and the language and the science of language is immense. And when I did a literature review of this, I didn't find any, much material. No one has spoken about it. So I took that as my lifelong project, Sri Aurobindo and Sanskrit. So then I started writing one article in Odia, Sri Aurobindo and Sanskrit, because I didn't have much knowledge in English. So, and then while reading Sri Aurobindo, I used to get into, and my colleagues here and then friends here used to laugh at me when I spoke to them in English. So my pronunciation was very bad, and then my sentence construction was very bad. But I didn't, I didn't feel embarrassed. I said, this is the situation, what to do? I learned slowly, and within 1 year, so the situation improved. So many people started appreciating that, oh, you are now speaking good English, and now you are, your understanding also is good, your sentence formation is good. So then after writing in Odia that whole article about Sri Aurobindo's contribution to Sanskrit, it was well responded. Then I discussed with some of the people, and then they said, why don't you translate it into English? So I started, made this attempt of translating it into simple English. But while, translating, I got a lot of inspiration. And then it happened in such a manner that small article of 10 pages became a full book of 100 pages in English. And some of my friends who are good in English and editing, so they helped me editing because they're good editors. So they helped me, they explained me. So my first book in English was Sri Aurobindo and Sanskrit, which in a condensed form has all the contributions of Sri Aurobindo into, like in that field. Now I take one section, whatever sections are there in that book, I take one section and then work on it thoroughly in a wider manner. So that's how I have worked on the Gita, on his science of language, on the Vedas, on Upanishads. Then slowly I am entering into I entered into this whole spirit of integral yoga, because we had very different idea about the yoga, we had very different idea about life practice, so which was not matching here. I carried all my burden of rituals because I'm coming from a very hardcore conservative orthodox ritualistic family. So for us, ritual was everything. I used to have my tilak, my mala, and my rituals. And then after 1.5 years, so I felt very, some kind of burden, some kind of limitations, that what am I doing? My grandfather had told me, injected this idea of freedom, but I'm not feeling free. So then when I went deep, I found that all my rituals are now becoming burden on me. They're limiting me. So, and there was this conflict also. On one side, the inner progress is happening. On another side, this outer ritualism is binding me. So I packed everything on one day, and then I did a samarpanam of all my deities and then mala and everything into the ocean with all respect. And then I moved on the beach like a free soul. And then I'm doing the same rituals whenever necessary, but it has a very uplifting feeling, not the same mechanical way of doing it. And in that process, what has pulled me more? The power of speech. Because I'm a lover of language, I'm a lover of mantra and practitioner of mantra. So this power of mantra, the power of speech, which always pulls me, drags me into the depth of it. So then it has given me a direction in my life. So my life has become a life of Shabda Sadhana. So Chando Sadhana, I call it Chando Yoga. So you must be hearing it for the first time because it's a new term. So
Yes.
like people do different kinds of yoga, this yoga, that yoga. but it constantly comes to me as a Chando Yoga. So for me, Chandas is very, very important. Chandas, in its root sense, means that which gives you the bliss, the rapture, the felicity, and which has harmony at its basis. So it harmonizes everything. It brings a harmonious rhythmic movement. So if our life, in every aspect of our life, we can translate that harmonious rhythmic movement into our physical, into our vital, into our mental aspects, all the actions, then life becomes beautiful. So if we lose that harmoniously rhythmic movement in any aspect of our being, we fall sick. So it is this harmoniously rhythmic movement which sustains the creation, which is at the basis of the creation, which gives the anandam, which is the greatest gain. So if this question is asked to any ancient rishi, or anyone asks this question, what is the greatest gain as per the Vedic seers and sages, or the realized souls of ancient India? So the answer is one, Anandan na parolabha. There is no greater gain than Ananda. So the moment we do not feel that Ananda in us, so we have to mark it that we lack sincerity, we lack harmony, we lack all that is necessary for the manifestation of that Ananda. And all that we lack is our weaknesses, is our limiting factors. So with this understanding, I started implementing everything that is said in the Shastras, in the Vedas, Upanishads, and the clarity that I have got from Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Because this understanding of the Vedas, Upanishads, Gita would have remained absolutely incomplete without the intervention of the grace of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. So anyone who comes in contact with Sri Aurobindo and the Mother will feel it, that it is this grace which helps us in bridging the gap between the old and the new. So so this is how my journey started and continues and will continue. And the force that I feel in the words. So what I do in my daily practice, that I do little bit of mantra chanting, and certain like chakra purification mantras, and certain mantras from the Vedas and Upanishads, and certain prayers. I do it, and along with that, I choose a particular word, either from the Vedas or Upanishads, from Sanatana Dharma, or whatever I come across. So if that, like it happens that because I'm very open to this idea, these words also attract me. So sometimes I feel the word is calling me that why don't you pick me and then contemplate on me? I will reveal my own meaning to you. So there is a whole dialogue, which lively dialogue, which takes place between me and the word. And then I contemplate on it, I repeat it, and suddenly there is a spark, that the meaning, the core aspect of the word which reveals. And sometimes when I share it, many traditional people who have no like they have studied grammar, they have studied the shastras, but maybe they lack this deeper spiritual aspect. So they say that how do you say this grammatically, it will not be, how do you grammatically justify this is not the way. But I'm not worried about whether the traditional people agree with me or not, whether the modern people accept me or not. But the joy that I receive when that word reveals its own meaning, that joy, and that is inexpressible. And that is what is helping. And then what I do, like I prepare short notes on the meanings of these words. So, and there I make a sincere effort also to reconcile these meanings with the tradition. Like if some commentator on the Gita, on the Vedas, on the Upanishads have spoken something which is close to this meaning which is revealed, the root aspect of it, the root sense of it, then it becomes a, like initially when I was not doing this, So there were many people who used to ask so many questions or raise objections. But now it is not happening because I'm in a state of reconciling this whole idea, and then bringing it close to what has been realized in a sense. Maybe like it was not explicitly mentioned, but that what was implicit, now explicitly I'm in a position to explain it. So that's what makes things very, very interesting for the from the sadhana point of view, and also from the sharing point of view, and also it widens our understanding of the ancient shastras and makes it relevant to our life today, and even the days which are coming, the ages coming in for the future. So Sri Aurobindo has given us a very ascertaining hope that yes, this whole idea of what attracts me more and more to fall in love with Sri Aurobindo and the mother is that this bridging the gap between the past and the future. So not remaining as a body of past, but using the glow and inspiration from the past as a springboard to leap towards the greater future. So this is where the hope lies and the relevance of this yoga lies.
Thank you so much. That was so all-encompassing. You wove together your personal journey, and then, of course, the inner journey, the realizations that happened along the way, and that has brought you to your life's work, and that you are fulfilling. Um, this conversation, this Shakti dialogue is like a masterclass. And what I feel is the need to take a step back for the next set of questions, to speak to some listeners who may not have a full knowledge of what is Sanskrit. It is a language, but what is the deeper power of Sanskrit? And what is traditional yoga versus the integral yoga? So how do you connect Sanskrit as a bridge to yoga and integral yoga? Could you speak to that?
Okay. So usually we mm, as Sanskritam as a language, uh, yeah. So Sanskritam as a language, which has been a part of my life right from my childhood, where like others in general, there may be many people who are doing this sadhana, but in general, when this is accepted and used and talked about as a language and taught as a language, for me right from the beginning, as I was inspired by the deeper aspects which were revealed to me by my grandfather. So Sanskritam, I do the upasana of this bhasha, this language, as a Shakti. So I feel that Shakti, that force, that enormous energy behind each and every sound of this language. It has captured the fundamental sounds, like all that has been presented in the Samskrita Varnamala, the alphabet. So these fundamental sounds are very, very potent sounds. The bija dhvani, the bija akshara, the bija mantra. So each and every sound is potent with enormous energy, enormous, like as if so many experiences and realizations of the truth, so many aspects of the truth, they are, each sound is pregnant with that. And one contemplates on it or feels the vibration of this, the purity, the force, and petal by petal, it starts opening its own energy and force to the upasaka, to the sadhaka. So
I
this
have
was,
just a quick question, Sampaji. Since my listeners on this go across the world to non-Sanskrit speakers, even non-Indians, every time my request is every time you use a word in Sanskrit to just explain it in English. So I
yeah,
noted you use the word upasana and you use the word bij akshar, bij mantra. So
okay,
just explain that, and going forward, whenever you use the Sanskrit word, just also translate it
give
in
the,
English.
yeah, surely. So I said like Varnamala is the alphabet. What is called in English as the alphabet, in Sanskritam it is called the Varnamala. And Varnamala contains the bija aksharas, the fundamental sounds, the basic, the, the seed sounds, the bija dvani, bija akshara, or bija mantra. These three words can be translated as the seed sounds, the seed mantras, the seed aksharas, letters. So when we contemplate and do the upasana, means like a deeper contemplation on it, deeper, you know, practice of sadhana, a certain discipline we follow, contemplating and adoring these sounds and going deep into in concentration to the core vibration of these sounds. So that is all can be explained by the word upasana. So in a deeper sense, upasana means to become close and then sit close or stay close to the sound or deity or anything like upa, near, asana. As means to place. You place yourself or try to go more and more close to it. So that is what is upasana, and it needs a discipline. It needs our sincerity, our aspiration, intensity in our purpose, and perseverance, and this nairantarya, continued practice and continued contemplation is very much necessary to entering into the spirit of anything. So this language, though it many things can be communicated, even the day to day communication can happen through this language, but what is important is that while communicating, while reading this language, if someone can feel the force, feel the purity, feel the vibration of it, so it brings many beautiful things in expanding our consciousness, expanding different faculties of our consciousness. So that's what it does. And from a scientific point of view also, it all can be explained because this is a very highly systematically structured language which has the power to instill the scientific temperament, like how it affects our logical thinking, how it widens our understanding. Each and every word in this language is conscious of its own history, can reveal its own history if contemplated often. So it's a very, very special language, but at the same time, this special language can find a special place in our life if we adopt it, accept it, and worship it, and then make it an integral part of our life, which this is what I have done by doing the upasana or the worship of this language. And to speak about it, because there are various platforms in which I have spoken the various aspects of this language, but for me the mantric force of this language and the highly rhythmic melody, the sonority of the sound system of this language is something very, very amazing for me. So I feel the rhythm, the melody, everything that you find here is rhythmic, is melodious. It sounds like a mantra. It, like one may not be able to express it, but one feels that force of mantra, that it has something different than the other languages. And therefore, in Lalita Sahasranama, the Devi Lalita is worshipped as there is one name as Bhasha Rupa. So, or Bhasha Mai. She is Bhasha Mai. She is all speech. She is all sounds. And this Bhasha is in a, like as per the tantric or the Vedic realizations, it has its the gross form and it has its subtlemost form. The grossmost form is the form through which we communicate with each other. So that is why we need maximum number of words and maximum expenditure of energy in our normal communication to make the communication effective. But the beauty of Sanskritam is that when you start communicating through this language, you don't need to communicate through many words. You don't require to use many words. It doesn't require maximum expenditure of energy, and with few words you can communicate or give expression to deeper, profounder, sublime realizations or experiences or ideas or thoughts or emotions that one wants. So that is why this is called a mantric language, because this is the very nature of the mantra, that a mantra, in a mantra, very minimum number of letters, minimum number of sounds, so minimum expenditure of energy and minimum loss of content of the experience. These three things are important. That if there is a certain realization of the truth, that truth can be communicated exactly without any distortion, without losing much content of it, and minimum expenditure of energy, and with minimum words, through a mantric language like Sanskrit. So that is why it's a very compact language. When you turn to the Upanishads, to the sutras, such, such compact lines, very few letters, very few words, but one needs hundreds and hundreds and pages of commentaries and books after books just to understand one line, one mantra. That's where lies the importance of this language. And ultimately, this language will liberate the whole humanity from all its limitations. That is the power of this language if the humanity opens itself to this language. It is not, like many people connect it with religion and this religion, that religion, and then whole, politicize it or bring all kinds of elements. But it is a sad fact that such a power, such a Shakti is available to the whole humanity to take advantage of it. But the sad fact is that humanity, because of its own weaknesses, limitations, and selfishness, is not open to it. But one day, I have a strong feeling that one day the humanity will be forced to accept this, because this force is a conscious force, and it's like a chit shakti. When this new consciousness will dawn upon the humanity, it will bring its own language along with it, and the whole humanity will be forced to accept it, because it will be living in that consciousness. So if it doesn't use this language, it cannot attune yourself itself with the consciousness, and it will feel unhappy living in that world. So that's what is my take on the language aspect. So whether one looks at it as alphabet, looks at its structure, looks at its whole gamut of beautiful literature that is given to us using this language, it's it has amazing things to offer. The amazing flexibility of this language that it has also offers a lot in appreciating the beauty and charm of this language, its poetry, its grammar, its thought contents. And the thought contents of this language have enormous power to uplift the readers, the users, to a very sublime state of consciousness. But one has to use the language with a conscious purpose and use it consciously with a feeling. not just mechanically for the sake of filling the stomach, or for the sake of doing something with this language. But the feeling is important. If one uses it consciously, gets maximum energy which is needed for our inner progress.
You have explained how Sanskritam as a language takes you to connection with higher consciousness. It is a yoga, just the practice of this with love and devotion and so on. In Sri Aurobindo's work, because he was educated in the UK, and he was so proficient in all languages, especially English, so he has channeled and received the book Savitri, and it's in English, and yet every line in that is mantric, almost in a Sanskrit way, right? So, but we'll not go into that, but it seems like other languages also, if brought through by a highly enlightened being, can also have that potency, and that beauty of that language can also be brought forward. So that's why perhaps in the Bible it begins with, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So there is a sense across cultures of the power of sound and the power of language to connect us with the supreme
It's very
vibration.
true. It's very true that there's not that this language or that language. Any language can be mantric, and it all depends upon the user of the language. From what state of consciousness one uses the language or expresses one's own ideas, thoughts, and experiences, translates one's own experiences and realizations into it. And Sri Aurobindo has liberated the English language, I would say. He has brought this language from its state of inertia and raised it to a level of awareness and level of mantra, and which is the need of the time, because English is has spread all over, and it is through this language people will start, like anyone who comes in contact with Savitri will automatically fall in love with Sanskritam. So it plays a role of bringing more and more people through English to the force of mantra, and it will play a major role in bringing Sanskrit to the normal life, because one will be bound to do that. So Sri Aurobindo has, his immense contribution in writing things in English, all these deeper experiences and all these things will have, people will realize its importance, and importance in bringing back the language of the seers and sages again. So in propagating Sanskrit also, because when one comes in contact with this language, the Savitri and the content of it, one would definitely develop a love for the mantric language, and love for Sanskrit. So that's what I feel, because he is a great synthesis of the past and the present, the old and the modern, or the ancient most and the ultra modern. So he is like, if I have to say, that he is a Sanatana Setu between Puratana and Nutana. So he is a Sanatana and eternal Setu bridge between Puratana, the ancient most, and Nutana, the most recent.
That is so beautiful. And I realize we are almost at the end of this part one. I'm going to call this part one. And I will stop recording here. And in our part two, we will go specifically into the, the most potent core mantras of Sri Aurobindo through Sanskrit. And we will learn from you, and receive your deeper understanding and experience of those three mantras. So thank you so
Surely.
much. We will
Thank you.
close part one here.
Thank you. Namaste.